Okay. How's your domain doing, Felix? Should we tell people that we're live? Yeah, I think we should tell people that we're live right now. Can you do that tweet for me? So, hi there. I'm Al Levine, and welcome to Ontario Extend Domain Camp. The tweet is going out, and then there's a question already coming in my direct messages, but first I have to retweet this. Yes. And I'm going to answer a question. I'm on the air now, Lisa. And we'll answer later. Because stuff comes in at Domain Camp. And this is a highly professional show here. But this is part of the Ontario Extend project that I've been part of for quite some time, introducing people to get to know better how and what they can do in their domain. Hello to viewers, and if you're out there, tweet me a question and I will I'll maybe see it. I got my assistant Felix on here, but you know, so far we've laid the foundation. Pretty much, I think my two viewers know this for just making sure. I mean, once you've gone on the cPanel a couple times, maybe that becomes a little bit less of a ritual, the steps to get in there. We don't look at everything in cPanel, but we know some of the key areas. And so as you're thinking about where things are going, the questions are always going to be, what does the URL, what's it going to look like? So, you know, the mad scientist who I keep referring to, you probably guess it's me. They have the domain extendlabs.ca. And sometimes they feel like they want a site like pictures.extendlabs.ca. So that's a subdomain. You know how to do that. You've done that a couple of times. But other times they may say, hey, no, I think it's kind of, it just would look better or make more sense if it's, you know, after the slash of extendlabs.ca. It makes absolutely no difference to the content. It's basically still sitting somewhere within that file structure of your pile of things that you're starting to accumulate. And it comes into play when we go through, as we've seen with WordPress, when you enter that installatron thing that installs WordPress for you because you tell it where it's going to go. So we always do that part first. Figure out where it's going to go, and then we go into the installer. So 3 viewers. There's 3 of you. Oh my God. Where's my Twitter? 3 is like a record now. So we will just do a little bit of overview for week 4. We wanted to sort of give you a chance to look at some of the other things that you can add. They might not work very well, or they might be, they just may frustrate you. Some of them are good. I can only say I've looked at a relatively small number of them and tried them out. Some are going to be more complex. Some are kind of simple tools. And so this would be a really good time to go to the Reclaim Hosting community and maybe ask other people what kind of apps that they've installed beyond WordPress. Not any bash. We're just going to put WordPress. I'm going to put it back there in the cabinets for this week. We're going to get back to WordPress pretty soon and go more into it for the rest of the August month. We'll have some more activities around WordPress, but the whole point of this week is to give you a sense that there's other things that you can put into your domain. They may be useful, they may be not, and so what my hope is that people will try some different apps and sort of share what they find. So if I don't stop yammering, I'm going to get set up. And I'm going to go over to my screen share so you can follow along and get my screen sharing going. And I will get over to my other web browser. And I already chased away 2 people, which is fine. You can't get caught up in the numbers, right? So a week for other adding other apps to your domain. really, you've gone in your cPanel, and I'll show you in a second. You know, I mean, you've gone in and you've clicked WordPress. Under applications, Reclaim Hosting has sort of put a few things here at the top level, which are ones that people more commonly use. And so one of the ones you may want to look at is Scalar. Omeka or Grav is sort of like an alternative to WordPress as sort of a blogging platform. Not quite as well, Grab's really good. A lot of people rave about Grabs. But the place we're going to go is this place called All Applications, where you're going to see so many icons, it might make your head spin. And so that's kind of the explore part of this week. And so the things that we're going to do this week is, since there's only so much time in the day to sort of write an explanation up for some of these, is I've picked two of them that maybe would be ones you might have some use for. So the first one is having a URL shortener that comes off of your domain. Why you might use that? Well, first of all, you can see right now that I've got as my example, I set up my URL shortener at this domain jump.extendlabs.ca, and then I have I created the rest of the URL that comes after that. So if you use Bitly or you use Google URL shortener or like any of the other, there's like gobs of them. Often you can go there and you can just quickly create a short URL to something that's longer or harder to remember. And often it's kind of just random numbers, but with some of them, I know I use in Bitly, you can sort of customize and sort of pick the name that comes after it. But because it's a shared surface, often your words are taken, and that's kind of frustrating. But it's also probably more useful. I'm like gesturing with my arms a lot, as if you can see my arms. It's going to be more useful if it's sort of part of the domain where your other stuff is coming from. And you also get some stats. So just to show you, I will just open this link in a new window. Hopefully you'll see this. This is just this kind of interesting star map that comes up, a little slow to render. And it actually finds out my location and generates sort of like what I should be seeing in the stars. I don't think it works as well with Safari here, but this is a different URL. This is, you know, blah, 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 blah. And so I can create one that's perhaps a little bit more easier to display or to share with my students if it's a little bit shorter and a little bit more abbreviated. So how the heck do you do this? Well, we're going to go in here. And first, again, I'm going to pretend I'm here in my Extend Labs thing, and I'm going to think about, well, where do I want to put this? So maybe I want to do, I think I want to do this in a subdomain. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to create a new subdomain, and I'm going to call mine URLs. And we've done this before, and this is going to create a new subdomain for us called URLs, and I'm going to go ahead and do that. And so that's available for me to install stuff in. And so we've done this a couple times before. And again, hopefully the creating the subdomain is getting less mysterious. You'll do this a lot. Now I'm going to go back to my cPanel, and just because, you know, I paid attention to this SSL stuff, I didn't really get why it's so important, but, you know, Camp says it's important, and Google says it's important, and other people say it's important. So I'm going into security, and I'm going into the thing called Let's Encrypt SSL. This was another activity in the bank. And so you probably want to do this for all the new subdomains you create. So there's this one called, oh, I got more than one page now. So here's URLs. This is the subdomain I just created, but now I'm going to create this SSL certificate for it. And I just take all the defaults, and that just means I can use HTTPS as the place my stuff will come from. This is all the precursor to doing the installing. So I'm going to come back here. I'm going to go to my applications. And I'm going to like see this giant list of things that we can install. within your Reclaim hosting account. There's going to be, and I'll come back to this, there are these like featured applications that Reclaim Hosting has sort of set up for this. And I'm going to come back to this a little bit later, but they're kind of grouped into categories. So community building, I don't know exactly how. There's a couple things like forums and things you can set up. There's a couple different ones. There's a lot of wikis. PHBB is a popular forum. I think these ones that are highlighted in yellow are ones that are more popular. I guess if you want to have like a chat server, you can do this. You can have guest books. Some of these, ELG is pretty old. I don't know if I would stay away from that. If you're curious about any of these, I'll show you what happens when we get down below. Content management, you know, these are all different things you can use to organize things besides WordPress. There are people who do Drupal and Joomla are popular ones. Some lesser known ones. I've used Known. It was sort of a one that allows you to kind of keep all your social media in one place and publish outward. So the indie web people are big about this. You can do the Mambo. I don't know what the Mambo is. Commerce and business. I don't know if people are wanting to do, I don't sell stuff, so I've not really done this, but shopping carts and things like that. Things to organize. There's a couple photo galleries, and we're going to come back to the FIO one. Surveys and stats. I've used Lime Survey. It's pretty good. So if you want to run polls and surveys from your own domain where you get all your data instead of sending people out to some free site where stuff may disappear, it's fine. But way down in the bottom, it took me a while to get down here, are some of the miscellaneous. And so I'm going to do this one called URLs. And this is your own URL shortener. It's an open source personal URL shortening application. So that's pretty good. And so for any of these apps, if you're curious about them, you know, you'll come in and there'll be like new features. There's sort of a live demo, I think, or some videos that show what it's like. Sometimes you can't really see a showcase of URL shorteners, but you can get some information about the apps, and you'll see that over on the left here are other ones that are available that probably do something similar. So if you've gone in and tried URLs and you really don't like it, you could do that. But we're recommending this one. Works really well. And so here again, we're going to decide where do we want to put this thing. So by default, it's going to say bookmarks off of our main domain. We don't want that, but we've just created this new one that's going to be urls.extendlabs, and I'm going to get rid of the bookmarks because I don't want it in a directory. And again, you can always see that the default here at the bottom, it'll show me what the URL is going to be for my bookmarking service and where it is in sort of like my pile of stuff. Now with this one, unlike the WordPress thing, WordPress has a feature where you can log into WordPress from the cPanel interface, so it makes it easy so you don't have to remember your password. This one's not as sophisticated, so I'm going to put this one, and I'm going to, because Felix is going to be in charge of my bookmarks, and I'm going to generate a password. And I'll actually, in this case, I'm going to store this in a safe place so I can come back later. You can't see where I am right now, I think. But if you do like a password manager, in this case, it's going to be, you're going to need to know your username and password to log into this, because this is not going to be a public tool that you use. It's really only going to be a tool that you use. So it's going to put, now you know my other email address, and I'm going to put Barkmarks, I'm going to call this, for the title of this thing. This really doesn't matter, but really important for this site is we don't really want to allow the public to access the back end of this. So we're going to say no, we want to require the password before allowing access to this application. So with all that, I'm going to create my thing here, and this is the fun part where we get to watch the thing. I always like to scroll down and to see where this is being created. So Right here, we've created my bookmark site. And what we have here are, we've created the site. Now, I'm going to show you something that's probably not in the lesson. So of any of these things that you've created, if you realize that you have a setting wrong from that initial setup, you can come in here and click the wrench icon. And so if I come down, it can let me, it's not going to let me change the username password. You'd have to do that inside the application. But I may change, let's say I want to add a title, to that. So some of these things we can change later on, and it'll be reflected. Sometimes it takes a few minutes here. So now if I go to this site, or if I try to admin it, you're going to notice, well, it's not going to do anything because, again, the Installatron can't do our admin for us. So I'm going to, because I saved this password in a secure place, I'm going to come off and I'm going to log in to this. So now I'm into my URL shortener interface. It sort of comes with ones, it goes to their software site. But let's say I really want to share the URL for week 4 with my students, but I want to do a URL shortener. So the basic thing is you can enter any URL in here, and I'm going to say, and I'm just going to do the camp URL, and I'm just going to call it camp. And so I'm just going to say shorten that URL. So there we go. We've just created our first short link. It comes up with some things in here where you can copy it right away. It shows you the original link it went to. You can actually tweet this out or send it to Facebook right from the URLs interface. Obviously, you can do that in other place. If I come over and maybe open a new tab, and maybe some of you might try this same URL right now, which is earls.extendlabs.ca/camp. I'm going to go there, and basically it's going to take that and send me to where I want it to go. So when I come back to my interface, if I reload it, it tells me how many clicks there are, and there's a couple things. I get stats on the activity here. I don't know what you can edit. You can delete one, like if I really don't want this one in here, I can get rid of that URL, shorten one, because I really don't need their blog link. But if you're interested, as you use this with your students, maybe if you're sending them on certain activities, you can do some stat collection if you want to. Now, one of the things is, this is fine, and yeah, I could come here and log in every time. That's really not the most efficient way to work. So there are a couple tools that you can use that make the URL shortener. So there's bookmarklets, which will work. They don't work in Firefox anymore, but they'll work in Chrome and Safari, which I'm right in right now. So basically, I can just take any of these. The instant ones will basically keep you on the same page if you're viewing. The other ones will let you modify things as you go. So I'm going to do, I'm going to bring this instant custom shorten. I'm going to drag this. I don't know if you can see this. I basically click on this blue button with the link on it, and I take it, I'm dragging it to my bookmarks bar. So now if I am saying, let's get another link. We'll go to domains of our own. And maybe we'll go out to, we'll go to Irene's, as we're out there on the internet, we can see Irene. She's sporting her new large coffee with 4 creams at procaffeination.ca. So she's been bringing over her blog. Look at that. She's got a gallery going. And so look at these. These are some really inspiring teachers that she's gone out and researched. So maybe I want to add that to my URLs because, wow, I'd really like my students to come here and write some essays. So I click that button and it's going to say custom URL. That's the part of it that comes after my short URL name. So I'm going to call this Great Scientist. And so basically, I've just added that to my site, but I don't leave the page I'm working at. So if I want to, again, I can copy that. If I really want to use it right away, it's there. When I come back to my URLs, let's see, I already lost. When I come to my admin interface, you can already see that this is added to my site. And again, if I use this shortened URL, I mean, you know how these work, but these now again are not going out to some third-party service, and you know, who knows what happens to it or if it sticks around. You know, if you have bookmarks out there on some service and it disappears, I mean, you're going to break these wherever you go. But if you manage them, they're going to be here in your own domain. So there's other things, you know, worth looking at here, you know, under the tools. There are some ways that you can have a bookmarklet tool that will send it right to Twitter if you want to do that. There's plugins, which I have no idea what these do, but there's some added functionality to this. So this is pretty simple. But it's something that's easy to do, and I think it's a good practice, especially maybe for your you know, your first thing that you install. That's it's not that complex to install, and it's pretty easy to go. I'm going to come back to my my hosting thing here, and I'm going to show you something that probably is not in the lesson. So you get some bonus tip for the 2, 1, or 0 people who are still left here. So when you come into all applications, shows you the things you can install. My apps shows me the things that I've installed. So on this one, you know, I've just done this Barkmarks as a demo. I don't really need this anymore. And so I can, you know, eventually you might get a lot of clutter in here as you're experimenting with things. So you can uninstall stuff. So I'm going to click this X. It's going to, you know, make sure that this is what I want to do. And I'm just going to click uninstall. And it's going to remove maybe some test sites that really didn't work out for me. That's one thing. So, you know, it's worth knowing, you know, how to do that. So the other thing is, and this is why Reclaim Hosting, one of the many reasons they're awesome, and Installatron is, because other hosting companies like Bluehost, I don't think they use Installatron, they use something else. But something that happens very much is you may work on a sandbox, or you may create a place where you're just doing some experiments with WordPress and it works out, and then you kind of want to take it from a sort of a demo mode or a development mode and make it like live and live at a different URL. So I have, let's say, I'll just show you this site. So I've got this sort of thing I've been working on. It's one of my splots. It's sort of a slideshow thing, but you know, I did this one for Ontario Extend. Let's say I want to create a copy of this site that I want to use for a different workshop. So I have something I've created that's pretty good material, maybe a template, and I want to make a copy of it and then modify it from there. So you can move things, or you can sort of create stuff. Maybe it's your, I don't know, maybe you develop a WordPress or a Drupal site that works really well as sort of a good template for your course sites, and then you want to make multiple copies of them. So there is this clone tool, the third one in. So this is pretty cool. So I'm going to click that clone tool, And so this is showing me where it's coming from. And then this is just like the installer again. So you're giving it a different place where you want to put this. So I'm going to put this into a directory. Let's say I'm doing this workshop for, I don't know, the other side of Canada. We'll take this to BC campus. So basically, I'm going to take something that lives on my site at picturethis.extendlabs.ca, and I'm going to just put a copy of it in a different part of my domain. And so I'm going to clone that site. And basically, it's going to go through the installation process. But instead of just getting a blank WordPress, this is basically making a copy of this presentation that I've created, putting it in a different part of my domain, and doing it in a way for those out there that have actually dealt with creating copies of WordPress sites. It's pretty complex. This is the most useful and powerful way I've seen to make duplicates of WordPress sites within your own domain. So that was the Picture This one that I created there. So here's the Picture This clone. So this is existing at a different domain. So I might come into here. I can log in directly because it is WordPress, and it has the same login as my my other site. So, and then I can change this. Let's just come in quickly. I'm going way off the demo track here, but you get some extra WordPress kicks for tuning in here. So I can change the name of this. Okay, don't picture this. I can change the title of this, and I'll publish it, and I'll close this, and maybe I will go to my site, and let's see if I remember how to change this. This is, and I'll say this is a workshop for BC campus. And so this is the place basically, this is not getting into the splat this, but now when I picture, you know, basically this is a completely separate site from my original one that is at, just to prove it, if I can type, picture this, yeah, here we go. This was the source one that I copied. So this all exists. So it's really powerful to be able to make copies of some of your stuff within the install-a-tron interface. That's insanely powerful. And then being able to delete them. So delete and copy application. So the other activity for this week, I think you'll be able to follow it from my instructions here. This lets you create a site that's for sharing files, much in the way that Dropbox works, except that it's going to be, instead of like sending your files to some company, and I like Dropbox, I use it quite a lot, but you can actually have your own sort of cloud-based file server that you can access from multiple files, and you can create folders or files that you can share publicly with people. So here is, here's something that's coming off of the Extend Labs. Look at that URL. That might be something you do, a URL shortener, but here's a picture. And so I can download this, or I can actually, send it with someone else. And so it's a way for you to share some files that you want. So OwnCloud is an open source file sharing one. We can go into the all applications. My friend Dave Lane was tweeting with him a little bit last night. OwnCloud is one of these apps for photos and files. He seems to think Nextcloud is a little bit better, and they're about the same. But if I decide I want to install OwnCloud, we go through the same thing. So you can learn about this, you can get some information, or you can just jump right to installing. So what happens, I'm going to skip the installing here, and let's see if I can just get to my site. So I'm not going to go through all the steps for installing. You've seen it a couple times. But when we get into my own cloud, again, you're going to need to remember your login to this site. But there's a lot of things you can do with it. We just have sort of done the really simple one. So if I'm going to share anything, it comes with a documents folder. I can just find a document somewhere that I may want to upload. So let's say I've got some stuff. I'm gonna grab some stuff from my Dropbox. Don't tell anybody I'm doing this. But like, let's say I've got some. There's this really great research article that I have. And so basically, I just uploaded this PDF to my own cloud. I can sort of create directories and structures that are useful for me. So I can have a whole structure for courses, and then maybe a list for each course. And maybe I want to store some key documents in here for my own organizational sake. But you can also come and click on any of these documents. Oh, I just downloaded it. I didn't want to do that. Come over here. And so there's information about this. So I can add tags for this. So this could be, for WYU 123, that new course I'm teaching. So you can tag your content. Let's see here, 1, 2, 3. Let's add that. So I can tag stuff if you like organizing things within tags. You can add comments like, this should be great for week 4. Type week 4, it would work. So right now it's just like internal comments for you. But really the thing that you'll probably do is figure out how to share it. So you can set up users. You could probably create access accounts, I believe, for other people who have other own clouds. So if you have your own cloud, you can sort of create a username, blah, 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 blah. I've never done that, but public link. So we're going to create a public link for this. You can put a password on it. I'm going to leave it public. And so I'm just going to share this link. And so right here, I can tweet this, or I can just copy that link to my clipboard. And then if I close all this, maybe I want to go over to my URLs thing and create a short link for it. But if I just use that, and it kind of creates URLs that aren't very pretty, but here I have access to download this, and it's coming from my own domain, not someone else's. So OwnCloud is very useful for that. So this week, I've sort of described basically only 2 of these. It's, takes, and so I wanted to give sort of the sense about what it takes to go through and install one of these applications. I'm asking for those that are in the mix here to try 1 or 2 of these and, flesh it out. And then once you get the status for how this is done, come over to the Extend Bank, Extend-Bank, eCampus Ontario, and come over to Add Activity. And so this is a place like right now, this is how I created all those activities for that. So you can create something for like getting into Joomla. We can do that. And so you writing up a little activity for how to do this. You're going to put a URL for this. You're going to click, domain camp and week 4 if you really feel like remembering that. Create an icon. So you get to create the instructions for, like I've done with those 2 apps, for telling someone else how you got into Joomla, maybe a link to your Joomla example, and say you're going to be first. If I could type first. One needs more coffee here. Set up a subdomain, blah, 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 blah. So, you know, you're going to write all your instructions out here. I did get the question, and I'll tell you if Lisa's watching. Um, Adding the image is a little tricky on this one. There's no place to upload an image. So you actually have to put an image if you want to include it into your description. And I really appreciate doing descriptions. It needs to live at a URL away from the site. And so we did have an activity, so you can put images and store them in your own domain. And then you can use the link for that to put them into this site. So if I go back to my, I already lost track of my domains here. So got to get back to, not that. I go to my cPanel, cPanel, there it is. Oh, how do I get into my cPanel? Well, I go back to my portal, and I log in again. Dum-de-dum-dum-dum, this is how we go with the demos. I go to my cPanel. Remember back in the first week of camp, we did going into the file manager, and we put some stuff. Look at all the stuff that I have in my mess now. So remember your main domain, public HTML, and I created a directory called stuff. And so I created one called screens. And so, you know, I have this one called, a little tricky to figure out what your domain is, but you can do it this way. You can explore. So I'm going to do extendlabs.ca /stuff was the main directory where I had stuff. I'll come to screens, and let's say I'm going to use my subdomains as the image that I want to use in my post. So this is a link that goes directly to my image. So when you're using the editor here, you have to have a URL where your image is sitting that it can find. And it can always good to add image descriptions. This could be sort of like diagram of all subs. And basically, I can add an image to my post or my activity that I add. So that is kind of about all I really needed to go through. You know, there's a bit more of work here when you get into one of these things and trying. I mean, installing it's one thing. Then you got to learn, you know, how it works. So, you know, again, don't kill yourself trying to get one of these to work. Go into the newbies corner of the community, ask if anybody's, you know, fiddled around with Lime Survey or whatever you're trying, or say, you know, I found something great that works really well. Here it is, but I can't figure out, you know, how to configure, you know, the plugin, or this really was not worth it. I recommend not doing this app because it didn't work very well. It's really hard to know how well these things work without diving in a little bit and figuring out what they do. So, you know, if you have a really good idea, like you know that you want to have a discussion board, that makes it a little bit easier. But if you're like, well, you know, I want a site where my students, you know, can, you know, share, you know, pictures, blah, 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 blah. Or if it's a little bit more vague, it really helps to take out a piece of paper, start doing some sketches and listings of things that you want the thing to do. Think about how you want it to look, maybe how to have an idea about what you expect to be the kind of interactions that people will do in there. Ask around if people know or can recommend certain ones that will make it happen. But if you're really just kind of like unsure and like, well, I don't know, scalar on there, I don't know what it is, you can flail a little bit if you really don't have a sense about the thing that you want to do. But pure experimentation is fun too. So if you just want to get in there and try to figure something out. And again, the apps that are in there, they're not all the same in terms of proportionate complexity. Some are pretty simple, single purpose, straightforward tools, or other ones, like, you know, WordPress has a lot of buttons we haven't even gotten into. And so so does Omeka, and so does Scalar, and so some of them are a bit more complex. So you can only go so far by just installing it, learning, and clicking around. So, find the documentation, and again, ask around in the community, etc. So that's week 4. And I hope a few of you, 3 of you, I'm looking. I see you in the back there. Yeah, you. Maybe come in tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern, or lunch and a half time, 12:30 on Thursday. I'll be in the Zoom room or on the community. And so this week is a chance just to try some of these apps. And then coming up, still need to sort out the schedule, but by some of the requests, I think there's some people who just wanted to find out a few more, get some more activities and things where they can learn a little bit more about using WordPress. So I think we'll do some things perhaps with understanding the menus, widgets, plugins, how the heck you choose a theme, which I can't really fully give a step, but just theme choosing is a bit of a minefield. And whatever sort of things that you would like to know about WordPress, fire away. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you out there on Domain Camp. And camp dismissed. See ya.